In the movie news this week, we have Boys creator Garth Ennis getting another one of his books turned into live action, casting announcement for the new He-Man movie, as well as John Madden apparently is getting a biopic and it's gaming related all at the same time. Hello nerds! You have found the place for all of the nerdy movie updates worth talking about. More than just comic book movies, though that is a good chunk of what we cover here in the news. We get nerdy about all kinds of movies, as well as the art of making movies in general. If you like this kind of news reporting, then go check out the full show over on the main channel called The Week in Nerddom, where we talk about TV and comic books and gaming and rumors and etc., everything in between. You can find the link to that down in the description or at the end of this video. Now, let's hear about all that movie goodness, shall we? Follow-ups on movies. We've had follow-ups in every other section. Why should movies be any different? First up is Aliens Romulus. While it has received fairly mixed reviews and not everybody's super happy with it, most of the fans are okay with it. And a lot of the normies are pretty all right with it. They're pretty happy with it, I would even venture to say. And anyone who's critical of movie making is, again, okay with it being fun and a lot of fan servicey stuff. And then from what I understand, I have yet to see it. I want to see it because I'm a big Alien fan, but from what I understand, we get a really mediocre third act. So that I'm not super duper looking forward to that, but I am looking forward to the rest of the movie. It has passed $108 million for its opening weekend, meaning that on a budget of $80 million, presumably that's just the budget to make the movie, not the budget also behind the advertising for the movie. General rule of thumb when talking about Hollywood budgets is you double it, because the $80 million is for the actual making of the movie, so then they put another $80 million roughly into the marketing for the movie. Probably a little bit more, I would say, for a movie like this, specifically because you've seen the ads everywhere. They were kind of hanging a lot of hats on this movie. But either way, that's still a pretty good sign. Not the biggest opening weekend that they were hoping for, but a pretty strong opening weekend. $108 million shouldn't be too much more difficult to get another $60 million to at least make all of their money back and then be slightly towards the positive side, which means we'll probably be getting more Alien movies in the not so distant future. Speaking of movies that are going crazy with the monies, Wolverine and Deadpool, I said we would continue to keep tabs on this one. We now have officially surpassed the Joker as well as Captain Marvel. So not only is this the highest grossing R-rated movie ever at this point, it is now the 9th highest grossing Disney movie ever. That's huge. That is really, really huge. And it's continuing. It just keeps going more and more and more. So at this point, I feel like we should start a campaign to just see if we can get it to be #1 on the Disney list, because it's already #1 on the R-rated list, so why not? Let's give Ryan Reynolds all of the money so that the rumor in the rumor mill doesn't come true. Anyway, let's get, and then, oh yeah, we have Masters of the Universe is also a follow-up this week. Casting announcement for the live action series, or live action movie rather. Camila Mendes, who played Veronica on Riverdale, has been cast as Tila for the new movie. Sure, I mean, all of these younger faces, I don't know. I never watched Riverdale. I don't know what she's bringing to the table, so I don't know what the kid they got playing He-Man is bringing to the table either, because I've never really seen him in anything. So sure, we'll keep tabs on this and see where the hell it goes. That's what we got for follow-up, so let's talk about trailers. All right, so generally try to keep the language to a minimum, but this first trailer has got language in the title, so just giving you the heads up. But Scared Shitless is the name of the first trailer that came out this week. This looks like absolute Joe Bob fodder. This looks just completely ridiculous. B-movie horror, I think we haven't gotten any legit, like, quote-unquote B-movie style horror movies for some time. We've had low-budget horror movies that were B just because of how bad they were, but not like
to this level of trolling almost. I don't know how to put it, but there's an obvious difference between something like this and then one of those like millions of things that if you go looking in the horror section on one of those free streaming services, you're gonna see a lot of really low budget, very bad horror movies. And that's not the same as a B horror movie, and this is definitely that. So go check out the trailer. Be warned, it is NSFW, but I feel like that should be obvious from the name of the movie. Again, Scared Shitless is the name of the movie. Next up, we have Y2K. This one looks interesting. It does not... The trailer does not go in the direction you expect it based on the first half of the trailer. First half of the trailer, it's an A24 movie. It's written by Kyle Mooney, who you'll know from SNL. He's also in the movie as a secondary character, it would seem. But it starts out like a teen comedy. That's what the trailer opens with. And then it takes a turn towards the strange / horror. And then randomly we get a Fred Durst cameo in the trailer. Like, why, if you're gonna have a super obscure cameo like that, and like he does not look healthy, well, he looks like they're trying to I don't even know what the hell they're trying to do with it, but it's obviously Fred Durst, but they've done things to put him into costume that just make no sense. But why would you give that away in the trailer? I feel like that's just a silly thing to have done, but it's A24, man. I don't know that I've seen a bad movie from A24. And they definitely like to push boundaries with their genre stuff, and this is going to be one of those. It's more of a merging of boundaries rather than a pushing of boundaries. But yeah, go check out the trailer, you see what I'm talking about. Speaking of Joe Bob fodder, oh boy, we have Frankie Frico is another trailer that was pushed to me from the YouTube algorithm that I thought was worth a mention here on the show. This is the same studio that brought us Psycho Goreman, and I don't think I need to say more. This is actually, all right, let me say a little bit more. This is the studio that brought us Psycho Goreman. So if you haven't seen that, you don't really know what I'm talking about. But so go watch Psycho Goreman. You'll want to strangle a child by the end of it, but she's super annoying. I think that's on purpose. But so it's the studio that brought you Psycho Goreman, and it's almost like their version of Beetlejuice, kind of. These guys are shaping up to be another Trauma-esque level of crazy, and then there's another twist in the end in this trailer too that just kind of goes way out into left field. You check out the link in the description because wow. That's what we got for trailers. Let's talk about some regular ass news. The big tease for regular ass news this week is Garth Ennis. We have Garth Ennis is getting a new live action adaptation from one of his graphic novels, one of his comic books, and that is for the book Crossed. It has been optioned by 6 studios. Now, let me translate that to you if you don't necessarily know what that means. So when a property gets optioned by a studio to get made into a movie, they reserve the rights. They're the only people or the only studio that can make that property into a movie. Nobody else can do it. That's not to say that they have a script. That's not to say they have a director or anything lined up. They just want the ability to make the movie. Then they go out and find a scriptwriter. They go out and find a director, etc., etc., etc. So it is possible we won't see a movie adaptation of this fantastic Garth Ennis book, because Garth Ennis is fantastic unto himself, but it is possibly going to happen, and so we will be keeping tabs on it should that become a thing. From there, let's talk about the Madden biopic. Yes, that's right. John freaking Madden is getting a biopic made after him. It gets weirder, because not only is it a John Madden biopic, but they've cast Nicolas Cage to play John Madden, and it gets weirder. I know, that's a pretty big curveball, right? But it's not a biopic like you're thinking. It's not exactly the history of the man. It's more a history of the game franchise. It is going to have John Madden in it, obviously. They've cast Nicolas Cage. But it's going to be more about how the games came to be and the legacy of Madden NFL, the gaming franchise, more than it is John Madden, the man franchise. So really interesting. Yeah, I'm very intrigued by this idea, because what a couple of curveballs. That's all we got on that one, though, so let's move on to our last piece of regularized news. And this one's more of a commentary, I think, on old Hollywood versus new Hollywood, because Brian Cox is a person. Brian Cox, you'll recognize him if you watch Succession. He was the dad. He's the one that they were trying to succeed. He also was the original HAnnibal Lecter in the Manhunter movie, and if you're really paying attention, he was the original William Stryker in the Marvel franchise, in specifically the second X-Men movie, X-Men United, X2, whatever. So he was at a convention, not a comic book convention, not a nerdy convention necessarily, but a film convention, because he's an artiste. He was at a convention and started ranting. Ranting might be a strong word, but having strong words about the current state of cinema and how it's drowning and how it's not long for this world, largely because of the Marvel and DC and those kinds of movies. That's a paraphrase, but it's pretty close to actually what he said. And then further on down the road in this same conversation, he mentions that, well, he was a part of this back in the day, so he really is the one who gave birth to, like, he created Wolverine, so it's partially his fault that Wolverine is a thing, because Wolverine and Deadpool is huge right now. So it's partially his fault. And then he continues that line of thinking and says, they don't even pay me the money that, again, I'm paraphrasing, but he thinks he's owed money for creating Wolverine. I don't know if Brian Cox is doing well. That's not how intellectual properties work. You didn't create anything, bud. You played a character. And need I remind you, it's a character that existed long before that movie did. That's a character that existed since like the 70s, I want to say, is when William Stryker made his first appearance in comic books. Might have even been a little bit earlier than the 70s, but at the very least, I'm pretty sure it was the 70s. So you're looking at about 20 years or so before X2 happened that this character existed. And this character, who was created by a writer for the comic books, is the reason why, kinda, sorta, in the comic books we have Wolverine, kinda, but also the writer of the comic book is the one who birthed Wolverine, and he's the one, or his estate at the very least, is the one getting all of the royalties every time they use Wolverine. Really, I think it's actually Marvel getting the royalties because of their really shady business practices when it comes to rights and who owns the rights for characters that are created under the Marvel umbrella. If you are a writer and you go work at Marvel and you create an awesome new character, when you signed your contract to work for Marvel, they took your ability to use that character anywhere else. They took all of your ability to monetize that character for yourself, because you did it for Marvel and therefore it belongs to Marvel and not to you. Anyway, that's a whole other conversation. Brian Cox. This is just sad. We got the Scorsese conversation, which was a better conversation to have, because that is the mainstreaming of art. As, I mean, like, it happens to all forms of art. It happened to movies a few times at this point. Happened to comic books in the 90s. It happens to music, depending on the genres you listen to. It kind of goes, it's very cyclical when it comes to music, and it always happens with the visual arts. It comes in waves with the visual arts. So, like, yeah, that's a better philosophical conversation to have about the cheapening of art, or the oversaturation of a specific style, or something along those lines. But to say that all movies are dying because comic book movies exist, and then also trying to say you're owed money for the existence of these comics, is just old man crazy. Like, Brian Cox is an amazing actor, and I really wish he hadn't done this, because this just makes me look at him and laugh now. Oh, okay. Yeah, rant over. That's done. Let's go on. We have suggestion for the week. This is an interesting one. We went horror again for the suggestion this week for movies. Session 9. This is a very interesting one because this is 2001, so it's digital. It's shot on digital in 2001, and it's kind of playing with form a little bit. Maybe not as much as other movies that are shot on digital that early on, but there weren't a whole lot of those movies. So this is just interesting to see from a historical standpoint, and also is pretty creepy. Definitely not the scariest movie you're ever gonna watch, but it does the job. Yeah, it's streaming right now on Amazon Prime. It's about $4 if you want to rent it. It's about $15 or $14 if you want to buy it. It's worth the rent, I would say, at the very least. It does come up on Amazon Prime proper from time to time. I think I've seen it on one of the free streamers occasionally as well. So if you want to maybe hold off and wait for it to come back to a free streamer, I wouldn't blame you. But it is really worth the watch, if for no other reason than to see how digital, when it was not as good as film, how you could make it work in spite of its downfalls, I think is the best way to put that. And also, again, if you want a good little scare, then it's a movie that'll do that for you too. So yeah, Session 9, that is your suggestion for the week.
That brings us to the end of the video, nerds. Thank you very much for joining me for the news. Once again, there is a full and probably much more up-to-date and recent episode of the news, the full-length version, if you will, called The Week in Nerddom over on the main channel, linked down in the description, and probably link popping up somewhere around my face right about now. So click on that, go check that out as well, or if you prefer your news in more truncated pieces, then by all means just stick around here and go check out some of the other stuff we offer on this channel. Thank you very much for joining me. We will see you in the next one. Before we go, always remember, nerds, that if it is generally nerdy, it's probably here.